Another statewide race that has attracted a great deal of interest is the contest to fill the unexpired term of U.S. Senator Tom Coburn, who announced his retirement earlier this year. The race has drawn a total of 11 candidates, 7 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and an independent. The GOP race is drawing the most attention, with the focus on 3 candidates who have the highest name recognition.
5th District Congressman James Lankford and former Speaker of the House T.W. Shannon have emerged as the heavy favorites in the battle to succeed Tom Coburn in the U.S. Senate, with former State Senator Randy Brogdon considered a potential spoiler. OU political science professor Keith Gaddy says the candidates are each trying to position themselves as the most conservative in the race.
So we have Representative Shannon talking about all of his experience in the state legislature, budget balancing, budget cutting, defending the line against higher taxes, which basically no one's been advocating for. And then we have Representative Lankford talking about all of his efforts to push back against the Obama agenda.
Not to be outdone, Brogdon says of the 3, he's the true conservative.
I have a 93% lifetime conservative voting record the 8 years that I served in the state Senate here in Oklahoma. You contrast that with T.W. Shannon. He says he's conservative. We're graded off the exact same index. He's got a 74%. Representative Lankford says he's conservative, yet he has a 68%.
Michelle Evans is a former state Republican Party deputy director and a Republican political consultant. Evans believes the race among Republicans is more a matter of leadership style.
And really, I think it's not about who's more conservative. I think the candidates are all conservative. That's what appeals to Republican primary voters. So the issues are really more about leadership.
Shannon and Lankford did their best to emphasize their differences during a televised debate Wednesday night. Shannon says the biggest issue the next U.S. Senator will face is the federal deficit.
The $17.5 trillion debt that our nation faces right now, I think is a national security risk, and it's an issue that I've pledged to oppose if I'm elected to the United States Senate. So I think that's the issue that probably separates us and makes the biggest difference.
While Shannon stressed his record as Speaker of the House in crafting a balanced budget for Oklahoma, Lankford emphasized his experience in Washington and the difference in working with a complicated federal budget versus a state budget.
A state budget every year, whether you're a Democrat or Republican in the governor's office or in the legislature, is required constitutionally to balance. 49 states, including our own, must balance every year. That's not been the issue with the federal government, and so we've got to get control of it. First things first, let's get us back to balance. Let's start paying back the debt. That's what I've actually been engaged in.
Brogdon also believes federal spending has spiraled out of control. So where would he make cuts?
We need to repeal the IRS. Let's get rid of the EPA, the Department of Education. Just go through the list. Everywhere government is overreaching, we are overspending in that category. Eliminate them.
While federal spending may be an issue for the candidates, the campaign spending in the race has drawn national attention. Campaign ads have flooded the airwaves, often paid for by outside groups.
Conservative results. Call James Lankford. Ask him to keep up the courageous fight against Barack Obama's policies. Paid for by Foundation for Economic Prosperity, Inc.
James Lankford voted with liberals to raise the debt ceiling twice. And Lankford voted for the Obama budget that increased spending by $65 billion and cut military funding. T.W. Shannon is the consistent conservative we trust. Oklahomans for a Conservative Future is responsible for the content of this ad.
T.W. Shannon and his shadow group are running attack ads that have been called over the top and a big gamble, hiding that Shannon voted for higher debt and expanded Medicaid for the same special interests that employed Shannon.
Don't believe the false attacks against T.W. Shannon. I know T.W. We've broken bread together, prayed together, and worked together for the conservative cause. As Oklahoma Speaker, T.W. Shannon reduced debt, reformed welfare, and stopped President Obama's Medicaid expansion. Now negative ads try to distort his record.
Last night when I watched television, there was nothing but Republican on Republican violence going on the airwaves. So the issues are they're playing get thee to the left of me. They're all trying to make the other person seem like the out-of-touch pro-Obama liberal.
Ben Odom is a former vice chair of the Oklahoma Democratic Party. Odom's not surprised the race has turned negative.
The idea of the old 11th commandment of Reagan, don't speak ill of a fellow Republican, That was more for when we were two-party competitive on these things. Now that they're viewing this Republican primary as tantamount to election, they think it's for all the marbles. So that ship has sailed.
What does have Odom concerned is the rising influence of dark money, so-called because the outside groups paying for some of the ads don't have to reveal the names of donors.
It's a concern because you have people that don't live here, have never lived here, are never going to live here, in large part determining who's going to win your election for the U.S. Senate. And that Senate seat should belong to the people of Oklahoma, not to outside special interests that can flood millions of dollars in here.
Oklahoma ACLU Director Ryan Kiesel says money has always found its way into political campaigns, but the U.S. Supreme Court's 2010 decision in the Citizens United case opened the floodgates for political contributions by unknown donors.
It's not Walmart out spending money for a particular Senate campaign. It's corporations that have been created overnight, and there's a real lack of transparency in who's actually funding those corporations.
Kiesel doesn't expect the dark money campaigns to go away.
I think as long as there's a sense that it works, it will continue.
Brogdon insists third-party groups have not been part of his campaign and says the influence of dark money troubles him.
I'm concerned and I'm afraid that big business, that corporations, that secret money is getting ready to buy a U.S. Senate seat here in Oklahoma for about $3 million. That bothers me.
Lankford and Shannon have disclaimed the attack ads.
I can't control it. I can control my campaign, and we've been very careful not to disparage anyone. We've been very careful to talk about the issues and to talk about the solutions and to talk about my record as Speaker.
4 months ago, when we started the campaign process, we made it very clear to our team. We've announced it multiple times, multiple press releases to make sure we're going to try to set a new tone for how campaigns are done in Oklahoma.
While the negative campaigns are a relatively new trend for Republicans, Evan believes the rising influence of the GOP in Oklahoma made it inevitable.
It's a growing pain, certainly. Definitely the Republican Party is a much different place than it was when I was at the state party several years ago. Before, we were lucky to get some Republicans to run in areas, let alone have so many wanting to seek the same office.
Gaddy says negative ads aren't necessarily a bad thing.
Negative just means you're drawing a contrast. These are not attack ads. They're not personal attacks on reputation. They're not making stuff up. They're drawing attention to each other's record and doing so in the least flattering way possible.
Gaddy says Republicans see the primary race as tantamount to a general election, expecting the winner to become the next U.S. Senator from Oklahoma.
3 Democrats are vying for their party's nomination, with the winners of the primary races squaring off against an independent candidate in November's general election.